right, so in front of me, I have two very popular devices. In one corner, we've got Valve's Steam Deck, and in the other, Asus's ROG Ally. Now, I've made videos on both of these, but it feels like every single time, the question that always comes up is which one do I pick up? So we're gonna get into that today. Now, one thing I think is really important to note is that my initial impressions of the Ally have changed quite a bit since launch. There's been updates, they've ironed out kinks in the production chain, because let's just say my first experience with the Ally wasn't that great. I think something that can kind of get overlooked and sit in a blind spot when it comes to a lot of these reviews is follow-ups. Like today, the Ally and the Steam Deck especially are really different devices than they were at launch. I think now we can get a much better picture at finally addressing the question, which is what really is the best handheld gaming system out right now. Maybe you think it's a Steam Deck. Maybe you think it's the Ally. You know, Lenovo's getting into the race now. I think everyone's getting into this handheld world now. And really, if this style of PC gaming is gonna stick around and be a truly feasible future, every step forward they make on these handhelds needs to be consistently cutting down the compromises. We can't have insane price tags or gimmicky features, just quality competitors. So bottom line is we're gonna compare both of these using a category system and then round by round assign a winner in that respective area. Of course, this is all based on my experience. I try to choose 6 areas that I think are most important to a device like this, but we'll keep it nice and simple so you can decide for yourself which category strengths you care about the most. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Starting with category number 1, and that's display. Now, in my order of importance, this happens to sit pretty high. It's what you're gonna be staring at anytime you interact with either of these. And this is really an area where the Ally improved over the Steam Deck. There's been updates that have made the Deck's display better, like the stock color calibration does make it look pretty desaturated, but you can fix that with a couple software tweaks now. But really, the more you dive into it without getting into performance or battery life just yet, it can be difficult to take full advantage of this display. The 120 Hz 500 nit IPS display on the Ally just offers the superior experience. You're really just comparing a 1280 by 800 screen to a crisper 1080p screen, and you can tell. So as for displays, this is hands down going to the Ally. Now next up is controls. It's how you physically interact with these handhelds, and of course this is gonna be a bit subjective, so bear with me here. Each of these feel vastly different in hand. The Ally feels like a smaller, lighter footprint, whereas the Deck feels like a larger, more rounded off design. It's actually 61 grams lighter, which is like the weight of a tennis ball. Now, the Ally also has these angular grips that I personally found could dig into my hands a bit more. It's not as noticeable when you're gaming with it resting on a surface, but what you do notice is the much looser analog sticks. Now, I've mentioned this in the past. I've tried to adjust the stick dead zones on the Ally. I've just never felt fully confident while using these sticks in aiming intensive games. I've found the tighter control on the Steam Deck's analog sticks to be preferable for those types of games. Now, this isn't Valve's first attempt at making controls, and at least to me, the addition of having physical trackpads that can serve as a mouse cursor or really whatever you want is valuable. That ease of use is something that a lot of people are gonna value when it comes to configuring controls. Now, I do think the Ally's bumpers and rear buttons do feel more tactile. I actually prefer them. When it comes to gyro controls, I don't think that Armory Crate has gotten official support for it just yet. So overall, as a package, I feel like the Deck just gives you more control and flexibility over the way you wanna play. So for controls, it's a W for the Steam Deck. All right, now here's a category that I think can get easily overlooked, and that's repairability and upgradability. It's an important contributor to how long these devices can last, especially batteries, a notoriously replaceable component since we are basically constantly in the loop of charging devices. The Ally and Steam Deck both support fast charging, so they work great with one of these high-speed Nexode chargers. This one's from Ugreen, and it's actually the first 300-watt multi-port desktop charger. It uses this intelligent system that takes 6,000 temperature readings per minute and verifies that any devices connected are protected from overheating and overcharging, which ever since I got the chance to try, it's legitimately replaced every charger I use now. I've used it for charging handhelds, battery banks. You can charge a 16-inch MacBook Pro from 0% to 56% in less than 30 minutes. It's gallium nitride. It supports the Power Delivery 3.1 charging protocol, which basically means you have multiple 100-watt outputs, so you can charge all your devices like full-fledged laptops and tablets at the same time without sacrificing anything. So shout out to Ugreen for being cool enough to sponsor today's video, and I'll put a link in the description if you want to check out this charger or any of their other accessories they offer. Now, even if a lot of people aren't necessarily going to need to repair these devices immediately, part availability and ease of use for working on these devices is really important. Valve has a collaboration with iFixit that essentially offers any replacement part you need along with guides. They even have full YouTube teardown videos, so that's sick. Now, in my experience, I've done SSD swaps on both of these, and honestly, the Ally can be even easier to work on. There's just a few screws on the back. You don't have any clips that can break. There's also an iFixit guide that breaks down the whole process, and it's really simple. You can find part availability options for the Ally from third-party Asus repair sites. And for this one, I almost called it a draw, but for the slight upgradability advantage is gonna go to the Ally. And now I've gotta talk about category number 4, which is performance. Now, the performance on these handhelds is obviously different, not as much as you may think on the wide spectrum of games. The main variable here in this category is gameplay fluidity. That means how does it feel to game on right when you jump in. I think one of the first things you'll notice on the Ally, especially if you've been used to the Steam Deck, is the speakers. They're just better. They sound richer, they deliver a louder, more enjoyable experience, and if you're into gaming on these without earbuds or headphones like I am, it makes a difference. And even before we get into the actual performance numbers, the ability to just boot into Game Pass with the Ally is great. There's no hoops or tinkering required to get the full functionality of streaming games, and it works surprisingly well. Now, spec-wise, on paper, you'd expect the Ally to just blow the Steam Deck out of the water, and you'll find that a lot of games played at lower wattages, the Steam Deck manages to actually edge out over the Ally. There's a really great video from Filterless that dives into that low wattage performance that I highly recommend you consider checking out. Think of the Ally as a mini laptop that just needs that power to really wake up and deliver that boosted performance, whereas the Steam Deck uses a very efficient chip along with an OS that complements it really well. That break-even point for a lot of games can sit around that 15-watt range. That's really where the Ally starts to show its muscles. But one of its secret weapons is FreeSync. Now, even though I've found the frame times in general have been more consistent on the Steam Deck, FreeSync really helps the Ally feel smoother during those FPS dips. So overall, as a package, if you're looking for the best performance, 120 Hz indie games, passable AAA gameplay, the Ally takes category number 4. And this leads us directly into our next category, which is battery life. This is one I've found can pretty easily be summarized based on the types of scenarios you plan to throw at these handhelds. If you're often gaming with heavier titles, the Ally can take a slight advantage in screen on time, usually with dropping the refresh rate to 60 Hz, which sort of defeats the purpose of having a 120 Hz display. But now where you really see the deck pull ahead is in the lighter titles, especially older games where it can cruise at those lower wattages and oftentimes drop double the battery life over the Ally. I've found that any sort of background instance within Windows, like a game launcher that lingers around minimize, can just tank the battery on the Ally. So you really have to gauge the importance of how much this category matters to you. If you're the type of person who's always near an outlet or travels everywhere with a battery bank, maybe it's not a big deal. You can recharge the Ally's battery faster than the deck, but when it comes to overall mixed usage, I've still found that the Steam Deck can take on a larger variety of titles and generally has better battery life. Okay, so finally, the last one is gonna be software and user experience, which originally I thought is where the Ally struggled. Asus's software reputation hasn't exactly won many awards, whereas Valve has fully invested into really pushing Linux to the forefront of gaming with SteamOS. It's had its growing pains, but really had this goal of prioritizing ease of use PC gaming, and it's been successful. And this is really where the Steam Deck has excelled. Linux can offer this ultimate customizable toolbox for people who want to tinker with their devices, but for the most part, SteamOS offers that classic console experience that a lot of us are used to. They're not constantly reimagining their UIs. If we know anything about Valve, it's that they like to keep their experience easy and straightforward. So now on the Ally side of things, Armoury Crate has definitely improved since launch. Like, it's a way more intuitive experience. It's sort of attached to Windows, but where Windows has its strength is its versatility. Like, if you're into modding games, it's a big one. You have full compatibility with basically everything, not only gaming. So if you wanted to use the Ally as a desktop PC, it's totally doable. Now, say what you want. Some people are just not gonna like Windows on handhelds. It's not really the best navigation experience when you're limited to thumbsticks and a touchscreen. I still haven't had that seamless sleep wake that I get with the Steam Deck, where I can just kick it back on and resume gaming as if I was using a console. It's gotten way better, but it's just not there yet. And for those reasons alone, the Steam Deck takes that seamless user experience and wraps it up into Valve's ecosystem. And for that, it's tough to beat stock Windows, which is why the Steam Deck takes the final category. The Ally still has all the classic Windows pros and cons you have to deal with, but if you're okay with that, you're absolutely gonna love it. But like I've said before, it's a shocking conclusion. Who could have guessed? It really just depends on what categories are most important to you. What do you care about the most? Like, are the Ally's strengths, like the better display, the more powerful processor, the modding capabilities, worth the $200 premium over the Steam Deck? I think if you're after that AAA gaming experience, yeah, I like the Ally, but when I'm on the go, I'm usually always taking the Steam Deck for those lighter titles and that awesome experience. Global availability for the Steam Deck isn't great, so maybe you'll take an Ally because you can actually get one. Either way, they're both good choices, and in a perfect world, a device with both these strengths exists, and maybe one that's not too far down the road. Either way, a huge thanks for watching. I'd love to hear your thoughts down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.